In the summer of 2022, an AI model was quietly released to the public. Within 2 months, over 10 million people had used it. Artists, designers, developers, marketers, and complete beginners were suddenly generating photorealistic images from nothing but a sentence typed into a box. No art degree, no software license, no gatekeepers, just words and then an image. The world had seen AI image generation before, but never like this. This was Stable Diffusion, and the company behind it, Stability AI, was about to shake the entire tech industry to its core. Before Stable Diffusion, AI image generation was a privilege. OpenAI's DALL-E 2 had launched just months earlier and generated massive excitement, but access was controlled, use was limited, and the underlying model was locked behind closed doors. Midjourney was building a community, but it lived inside a Discord server and operated as a subscription service. The tools existed, but the power was curated. Stability AI changed that equation completely. It handed the keys to everyone, from a hedge fund analyst to an AI revolutionary. Imad Mostak was not the typical Silicon Valley founder. He had no background in AI research. He had studied mathematics and computer science at Oxford, spent years as a hedge fund analyst, and pivoted into technology through a growing obsession with what artificial intelligence could do for the world. Especially for underserved communities, he co-founded Stability AI in 2019, driven by one central idea: that the most powerful AI tools in the world should not belong to the few. They should belong to everyone. That philosophy became the DNA of everything Stability AI built. The company positioned itself not as a product company, but as an infrastructure company, one committed to open source development at a time when the biggest players in the industry were moving in the opposite direction. OpenAI had started as a non-profit with open ambitions, but by 2022 it had become a closed, commercially driven organization. Google's AI research was conducted largely behind closed doors. Meta was doing interesting work, but its releases were selective. Stability AI looked at this landscape and decided to be different. The foundation of Stable Diffusion was not built entirely inside Stability AI's walls. The core research came from a team at LMU Munich in Germany, where researchers had been developing a technique called latent diffusion, a method of generating images by learning to reverse the process of adding noise to existing images. This work was academic, rigorous, and technically groundbreaking. Stability AI recognized its potential, funded the computational infrastructure needed to scale it, and brought 4 of the key researchers, Robin Rombach, Andreas Blattman, Patrick Ezer, and Dominic Lorenz, directly into the company. The collaboration also involved researchers from Runway ML, a creative AI startup that had been building tools for video artists and filmmakers. Together, this combined brain trust produced Stable Diffusion 1.0, which was co-released on August 22, 2022. What made it explosive was not just the quality of the output. It was the decision to release the model weights publicly, meaning anyone could download the actual AI, run it on their own hardware, modify it, fine-tune it, and build entirely new tools on top of it. A consumer GPU with as little as 2-4 GB of VRAM could run Stable Diffusion locally. That was not a small detail. That was a revolution. How open source AI wrote the rules. The effects of Stable Diffusion's release were immediate and industry-wide. Within weeks, developers around the world had built their own interfaces, fine-tuned models for specific art styles, and created entirely new applications that Stability AI had never imagined. Tools like the AUTL11 web interface gave non-technical users a polished front-end experience for free. Communities exploded on Reddit and Discord, with nearly 270,000 members joining the Stable Diffusion Discord channel alone. Adobe, one of the most powerful companies in the creative software space, was forced to accelerate its own AI efforts and eventually launched Adobe Firefly, in part as a direct response to the democratizing pressure Stable Diffusion had created. The entertainment and creative industries felt it too. Visual effects houses that had spent decades building proprietary pipelines began experimenting with Stable Diffusion integrations. Weta Digital, the legendary visual effects company behind films like Avatar and The Lord of the Rings, became a notable name in this space. Its former CEO, Prem Akkaraju, was eventually Stability AI's new CEO in June 2024, a move that underscored just how deeply the worlds of Hollywood and generative AI were beginning to intersect. Advertising agencies, game studios, and independent creators all found use cases. Musician Peter Gabriel collaborated with the Stability AI community during a creative competition called Diffuse Together, where 200 community members contributed GPU power to generate AI visuals tied to his music. The model was being used in scientific research as well. Researchers used Stable Diffusion techniques to reconstruct and visualize brain activity, with the work cited in Scientific American. No other open-source AI model had ever reached into this many industries simultaneously. Stability AI followed the initial release with continued development. Stable Diffusion 2.0 arrived in November 2022, introducing a depth-guided image model. Subsequent versions brought higher resolution, faster generation speeds, and expanded capabilities. By mid-2023, SDXL1 could generate 4 high-definition images in under 3 seconds. Billions of images had been generated globally. The company had grown from 50 employees to nearly 200. Investors had taken notice. A $101 million funding round led by Coatue and Lightspeed Venture Partners pushed Stability AI's valuation to $1 billion. A company that changed everything. No disruption of this scale comes without friction. Stability AI collected more than its share. Getty Images filed a major lawsuit against the company, alleging that over 12 million of its licensed photographs had been used without permission to train Stable Diffusion. Artists across social media raised fierce objections to the idea that their work had been scraped from the internet and fed into a model that could now replicate and recombine their style on command. These were not fringe concerns. They cut to the heart of what it meant to build AI on the backs of human creative work, without consent, without compensation, and without credit. The open-source nature of the model also created real problems with misuse. Stable Diffusion was used to generate non-consensual deepfakes, including those involving celebrities. It was used to create graphic content that mainstream platforms would never allow. Stability AI's response, providing filtering tools but allowing individual users and companies to deploy the system largely as they wished, satisfied very few critics. Representative Anna Eshoo of California wrote directly to national security officials urging action against what she called the release of unsafe AI models. Inside the company, things were also turbulent. Co-founder Cyrus Hodes filed a lawsuit alleging that Mosaic had deceived him into selling a 15% stake in the company for $100 just months before the $101 million funding round. Multiple senior researchers eventually departed, including Robin Rombach, Blattman, and Lorenz, 3 of the scientists most responsible for Stable Diffusion's underlying architecture. Leadership instability mounted, and in March 2024, Emad Mostaque stepped down as CEO, citing a desire to pursue decentralized AI development. Despite all of this, the legacy of what Stability AI built cannot be undone. The company did not just release a product. It introduced a new philosophy of AI development, one that argued the most transformative technology should be publicly owned and openly accessible, not controlled by a handful of corporations. That argument changed the conversation permanently. Meta's decision to open-source its Llama series of large language models was shaped in part by the precedent Stability AI had established. Smaller AI labs worldwide found new permission to release their work openly. Developers who had never touched AI before suddenly had a tool they could run on their own machines, experiment with freely, and build businesses on top of. The AI industry in 2022 was a walled garden tended by a small number of powerful institutions. Stability AI knocked a wall down. What grew through that opening, the tools, the communities, the art, the abuse, the legal battles, and the endless downstream innovation, is still growing today. The disruption was real, the consequences were complicated, and the question it forced the world to answer is still very much open. When technology becomes powerful enough to reshape entire creative industries, who gets to decide who holds it? Stability AI gave the world one answer. It is still living with the results.